Damn GPS! Audrey slapped the steering wheel, staring at her phone screen, which stubbornly showed only a question mark where the map should be. The dirt road stretched ahead of her like an endless labyrinth, flanked by barbed wire fences and pastures that seemed to repeat infinitely under the sweltering sun of Greenwood County, Vermont. She had been driving for 3 hours straight, fleeing Chicago as if her life depended on it. And maybe it did. Her black sedan, so suited for urban traffic, looked ridiculously out of place in that rural landscape, accumulating red dust that already covered her windshield and mirrors. Audrey turned off the engine and rested her forehead on the steering wheel, her heart still racing with the memory of the morning, the silent crisis in the office, the feeling of suffocation, the desperate decision to abandon everything and seek refuge at her great-aunt Beatrice's homestead. A movement near the fence caught her attention. A man was crouched near a cattle gate, tinkering with something she couldn't identify. Audrey hesitated for a moment. In the city, she would never approach a stranger, but necessity spoke louder. She got out of the car, automatically smoothing her navy blue business dress, which was already wrinkled from the journey. Her high heels sank slightly into the soft earth as she approached. "Excuse me," she called, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The man looked up and Audrey was surprised. She expected to find a common farmhand, but the eyes that met hers were an intense green, intelligent and curious. He must have been in his early 30s, his face tanned by the sun, his large, calloused hands holding pliers. He wore a simple cotton shirt and faded jeans, but there was something in his posture that conveyed confidence. "Good afternoon," he said, rising with a fluid movement. "Can I help you?" His voice was deep, unhurried, with a gentle regional accent that Audrey had almost forgotten since childhood. "I'm lost," she admitted, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "I'm looking for Aunt Beatrice's homestead, Beatrice Montgomery. Do you know it?" The smile that formed on his face was genuine, completely transforming his features. "Of course I know Aunt Beatrice. Quite a woman." He pointed to a fork in the road about 200 yards ahead. "You'll go that way to the left. After about 2 miles, you'll see a blue gate with a small sign. That's it. Thank you so much." Audrey sighed, relieved. "I thought I was going to have to sleep in the car." Caleb chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. "Around these parts, there's always someone to lend a hand." He studied her with curious eyes, noticing the contrast between her urban appearance and the rural setting. "Are you related to Aunt Beatrice?" "I'm her great-niece, Audrey." She extended her hand, an automatic gesture from the corporate world. "Caleb," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Caleb Donovan. Welcome to our region." There was something in the way he said "our region" that piqued Audrey's curiosity. It didn't sound like possession, but like genuine belonging. "Thank you so much for the help," she said, already heading back to her car. "I hope we'll see each other around." "You can bet on it," Caleb replied, watching her get into the car with a smile she couldn't quite decipher. As Audrey drove towards the fork in the road, she couldn't get the strange feeling she'd had during the encounter out of her mind. There was something about that man, a tranquility, a solidity, that contrasted completely with the frantic world she had left behind. What she didn't know was that Caleb remained standing by the fence, watching the sedan drive away down the dusty road, wondering what storm could have brought a woman like that to those peaceful backroads. And what storm was yet to come. The blue gate appeared exactly where Caleb had indicated. Audrey got out to open it, feeling nostalgic as her hands touched the warm metal. The house appeared at the end of the short road, small and welcoming, with whitewashed walls and a century-old fig tree extending generous branches over the roof. Before Audrey even turned off the engine, Aunt Beatrice appeared on the porch. At 78, she maintained an upright posture and lively eyes. "My dear," she exclaimed, coming down the steps with agility. "What joy you've brought me." Audrey allowed herself to be enveloped by the warm embrace, feeling the familiar scent of coconut soap and lavender. For a moment she wanted to cry, not from sadness, but from profound relief. "Aunt Beatrice, I'm sorry to show up like this unannounced." "Nonsense, this home has always been yours too." Her aunt studied Audrey's face. "From the looks of you, you've arrived just in time." "What do you mean?" "My dear, I raised 6 children and I've seen many tired people in my life. You have that look of someone who needs to stop for a while." In the kitchen, The unmistakable scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the aroma of burning wood enveloped Audrey like a hug. Aunt Beatrice prepared coffee and arranged freshly baked apple fritters on a floral platter. "So, what brought my girl back home?" Audrey stirred the sugar in her ceramic mug. "I think I was losing myself, Aunt. At work, in life, everything was too fast, too noisy. I woke up every day feeling empty. And you came to find the real Audrey here?" "Something like that. I remembered the summers I spent here, the feeling of belonging somewhere. Then stay as long as you need. The land has a way of showing us who we truly are." After coffee, Audrey rested in the back bedroom, the same one from her school holidays. The iron bed was covered with a patchwork quilt, and the windows overlooked the yard where chickens pecked peacefully. She lay watching the shadows of the leaves dance on the ceiling, listening to forgotten rural sounds: birdsong, the distant hum of a tractor, the low moo of cattle. It was so different from the constant hum of the city. When the sun set, she looked for Aunt Beatrice, who was watering the garden. "Aunt, you mentioned some trunks in the attic." They climbed a narrow, creaking ladder. The small, dusty attic held decades of family memories in wooden trunks and cardboard boxes. "Here are some things from your great-grandmother Eleanor," Aunt Beatrice said, rummaging through old fabrics. Audrey opened the second trunk and found, wrapped in linen, a hardcover notebook with edges worn by time. "Aunt, what is this?" Aunt Beatrice took the notebook with reverence, opening it to pages covered in her mother's careful handwriting. "My goodness, it's Mama's recipe book. I thought I'd lost it." The pages contained handwritten recipes: creamy maple fudge, old-fashioned coconut macaroons, homemade peach cobbler, peanut brittle, each accompanied by personal notes. "To make it creamy, stir always in the same direction. Secret: a pinch of salt enhances the sweetness." "I remember these sweets," Audrey murmured, delicately touching a page. "You used to make them all when I came for holidays. And they were delicious, weren't they?" Mama had a true gift for baking. She sold them in town, earned a little extra money. Audrey leafed through the notebook, fascinated by the careful calligraphy. "Aunt, do you still remember how to make these sweets?" "Of course, dear. It's all here in my memory and my heart." Audrey held the notebook against her chest, feeling something awaken within her. A spark of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. "I think I just discovered what I came here to do." The next morning, Audrey woke up to the rooster's crow and a strange sense of renewal. She had slept deeply for the first time in months, lulled by the gentle sounds of the rural dawn. The recipe book was on the bedside table, where she had left it the night before like a rediscovered treasure. She went down to the kitchen and found Aunt Beatrice already preparing breakfast. The wood-burning stove was lit, emanating a warm, welcoming heat, and the table was simply set. Homemade bread, farm butter, fig jam, and fresh local cheese. "Good morning, Aunt," Audrey said, kissing the woman's forehead. "Good morning, my dear. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I've slept in years." Audrey poured herself coffee, inhaling the strong, full-bodied aroma. "Aunt, I've been thinking all night about those recipes." Aunt Beatrice smiled, as if she had expected this conversation. "So, what do you want to do with them?" "Well, I was thinking—" Audrey hesitated, still organizing her thoughts. "You said your mother used to sell sweets in town. What if we did that again? Not just to earn some extra income, but to keep this tradition alive?" Aunt Beatrice's eyes sparkled with interest. "Are you serious, dear?" "Completely. I have experience with planning, organization, sales. I can apply that here. And you have the knowledge, the recipes, the special touch." Aunt Beatrice got up and walked to the window, watching her chickens peck freely in the yard. "You know, Audrey, it's been hard to keep the homestead alone. The bills keep coming. And retirement?" She sighed deeply. "Maybe it really is a good idea." "Then let's start today," Audrey said, feeling an excitement she hadn't experienced in a long time. "How about we make some maple fudge to test?" The morning turned into a practical lesson in traditional cooking. Aunt Beatrice guided Audrey step by step. How to heat the milk to the right temperature, when to add the sugar, how to stir with the wooden spoon to prevent it from curdling. The sweet aroma gradually filled the kitchen. "Patience is the secret," her aunt said, watching Audrey stir the mixture. "Maple fudge doesn't rush. It gets ready in its own time. While they waited for the right consistency, Audrey took the opportunity to ask questions about every detail. Exact quantities, cooking time, preservation tricks. Her organizing mind was already calculating costs, thinking about packaging, imagining presentation styles. The first batch was perfect, creamy with the characteristic golden color and the flavor that awakened Audrey's dormant childhood memories. "It tastes just like my childhood," she said, tasting a spoonful. "Aunt, we need to take this to the farmer's market on Saturday." "The market?" Aunt Beatrice laughed. "My dear, you certainly don't waste time. And why would I? If the fudge is good, people will want to buy it." That afternoon, they decided to go to town to buy ingredients and get to know the local market better. The small town maintained its rural charm, with colorful colonial houses, a century-old church in the central square, and modest but busy shops. At the general store, Audrey carefully observed the products on display. There were some industrialized sweets, but nothing that compared to the artisanal quality they could offer. "Aunt Beatrice," a male voice called from behind them. Audrey turned and her heart gave a little jump. It was Caleb, the man she had asked for directions the day before. He was dressed differently from his work clothes, wearing a light blue dress shirt and dark jeans, but he maintained the same gentle smile. "Caleb, my boy," Aunt Beatrice greeted him warmly. "Do you know my great-niece, Audrey? We met yesterday," he said, extending his hand to Audrey. "How was your arrival? Did you settle in well?" "Very well, thank you," Audrey replied, noticing how his presence seemed to naturally fill the space around them. "Caleb owns the homestead next to ours," Aunt Beatrice explained. "One of the best coffee growers in the region." "You exaggerate, Aunt," Caleb said modestly. "And you two, shopping for a special project?" Audrey and Aunt Beatrice exchanged knowing glances. "We're starting a small production of artisanal sweets," Audrey said, "using traditional family recipes." The interest in Caleb's eyes was immediate. "What a fantastic idea. The region needs to value these traditions more." He paused, thoughtful. "Have you thought about participating in Saturday's market?" "Exactly what we were planning," Audrey smiled. "Then you'll have a guaranteed customer. I love a good homemade sweet." After saying goodbye to Caleb, Audrey and Aunt Beatrice finished their shopping in silence. Only on the way back to the homestead did her aunt comment, "Caleb is a good man, you know. He lost his parents young, inherited the homestead, and ran everything himself. Hardworking, honest, respected by everyone." Audrey just nodded, but she couldn't get out of her mind the way his eyes had sparkled when she talked about the sweets, nor how his presence had made the afternoon more interesting. Back at the homestead, as they organized the ingredients in the pantry, Audrey felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. She was about to embark on something completely new, far from her comfort zone. But for the first time in a long time, this uncertainty didn't scare her. On the contrary, it made her feel alive. Saturday dawned perfect for the market. Audrey woke up at 5, anxious and energized. She had spent 3 days preparing sweets: creamy maple fudge, old-fashioned coconut macaroons, peanut brittle, and molasses cookies. In the kitchen, Aunt Beatrice organized glass jars and brown paper bags. "Nervous?" her aunt asked. "A little. It's been a long time since I felt so invested in something. It's a good sign. When your heart is in what you do, things flow naturally." In the central square, Audrey set up her stall with a white lace tablecloth and the sweets attractively displayed. The neighboring vendors came to introduce themselves, and she realized that this was more than just a market. It was a community gathering place. The first customer stopped, attracted by the smell. "Is everything homemade?" "Freshly made, with traditional family recipes." Audrey offered a sample of maple fudge. The woman tasted it and her eyes lit up. "Oh, that's delicious. I'll take 2 jars." Sales flowed better than expected. Around 10 o'clock, Audrey saw Caleb approaching with an older man with white hair. "Good morning, Audrey. How are sales?" "Better than I expected. This is Mr. Henderson, owner of the central market in town." The man examined the sweets with an experienced eye and tasted each variety. "Exceptional quality. Have you thought about supplying to commercial establishments?" "What do you mean?" "My market has always had difficulty finding quality artisanal sweets. If you can increase production, I can place regular orders." Audrey took his card, feeling her heart quicken. It was much more than she expected for the first day. After Mr. Henderson left, Caleb remained at the stall. Congratulations. In one day you achieved something that takes many people months to accomplish. It was beginner's luck. It wasn't luck. It was quality and dedication. Caleb hesitated. Audrey, can I invite you to something? She looked at him, curious. Tomorrow I'm harvesting coffee at the homestead. It's harvest season, and I always do a special harvest for premium beans. Would you like to see the process? Audrey felt a flutter in her stomach. I'd love to. What time? I'll pick you up at 7. Wear comfortable clothes and closed-toe shoes. Caleb smiled and walked away, but not before buying a jar of each sweet to test the quality at home. Audrey sold almost all of her production and made several contacts for future orders. Back at the homestead, she told Aunt Beatrice everything. Incredible, Aunt. She recounted the sales, Mr. Henderson's interest, and Caleb's invitation. That boy has always been thoughtful. And you? Are you going to accept? I already have. It's just to see the harvest. Professional interest. Of course, dear. Her aunt agreed, but her eyes sparkled with complicity. That night, Audrey took a long time to fall asleep. Her mind was buzzing with plans to expand production, ideas for new flavors. But what kept her awake most was the anticipation for the next day and the opportunity to get to know Caleb better. The countryside was teaching her that the best surprises came when she least expected them. The sound of the engine approaching promptly at 7 in the morning made Audrey look out the window. Caleb got out of a white pickup truck, wearing jeans, a cotton shirt, and leather boots. She had chosen simple clothes, jeans, a long-sleeved shirt, and sneakers, but still felt out of place in that rural environment. Good morning, Caleb greeted her when she came out of the house. Ready to see the green gold? Green gold? That's what we call coffee around here. You'll understand why. Caleb's homestead was only 15 minutes from Aunt Beatrice's. As the truck climbed the dirt road, Audrey began to realize the scale of the land. Endless rows of coffee plants stretched across the slopes, creating a green geometric pattern that disappeared into the horizon. Wow, she murmured. It's immense. 700 acres, Caleb said with discreet pride. My great-grandfather started with 5. Each generation expanded a little. They stopped near a group of workers who were already busy. Audrey watched the process, fascinated. Men and women moved between the rows with baskets tied to their waists, picking only the ripe beans with quick, precise movements. It's work that requires a lot of knowledge, Caleb explained. You need to know how to identify the exact point of ripeness. Green beans spoil the whole batch. He led her to the nearest coffee plants. Want to try? Audrey accepted the basket he offered and tried to imitate the movement of the pickers. Her attempts were clumsy, much slower than the rhythm of the experienced workers. It's harder than it looks, she laughed, wiping sweat from her forehead. It takes years to get the hang of it. But you're doing well for a beginner. As they walked among the coffee trees, Caleb told her about the different varieties planted, the necessary care, the challenges of climate change. Audrey realized that behind the apparent simplicity was a deep, almost scientific knowledge. Did you study agriculture? Agricultural science from Purdue University, Caleb confirmed. But I really learned it here from my father and grandfather. And you always knew you wanted to continue with the homestead? Caleb stopped walking, looking at the landscape around him. There was a time when I thought about going to the city, working for some multinational corporation, but he gestured, encompassing the coffee fields. This is more than just a business. It's history, tradition, responsibility to the families who work with us. Audrey nodded, perfectly understanding that feeling of belonging. And you? Caleb asked. Always worked in banking? 10 years. I thought it was my calling until I realized I was just fulfilling expectations. She looked at her own hands, still dirty from the coffee field's soil. Maybe my true calling was here all along. They were interrupted by one of the workers, who approached with a worried expression. Mr. Donovan, there's a man at the main house wanting to speak with you. He said it's about important business. Caleb frowned. What kind of man? In a suit, expensive car, didn't give his name. Audrey noticed the tension that settled on Caleb's face. Are you expecting anyone? No, and I rarely get unexpected business visits. He addressed the worker. Tell him I'll be right down." On the way back, Caleb was visibly uncomfortable. "Sorry to cut the tour short," he said, "but these kinds of unexpected visits never bring good news." "No problem. It was a wonderful morning." "Audrey," Caleb stopped the truck before they reached the main house. "I'd like to continue our conversation. How about we have dinner together tomorrow? I know a simple restaurant in town, but the food is excellent." The invitation caught Audrey by surprise, but pleasantly. "I'd love to." The smile that formed on Caleb's face was worth all the nervousness of the moment. When they arrived at the homestead's main house, Audrey saw a middle-aged man wearing a dark suit waiting beside a black sedan. There was something in his posture that immediately made her uncomfortable. "Do you know him?" she asked Caleb. "Never seen him in my life," he replied, but Audrey noticed that his fists were clenched. Caleb dropped her off at Aunt Beatrice's homestead and returned to attend to the visitor. Audrey went inside, still tasting the sweetness of that special morning, but with a hint of worry she couldn't explain. Aunt Beatrice greeted her with a mischievous smile. "So, how was the harvest?" "Incredible, Aunt. Caleb knows every plant in that place." Audrey hesitated. "He invited me to dinner tomorrow." "That's wonderful. You two make a handsome couple." "Aunt," Audrey protested, laughing. "We're just friends." "Of course, dear. And I'm just an old woman who knows nothing about romance." But while Aunt Beatrice laughed, Audrey couldn't forget the image of the man in the suit waiting for Caleb, nor the feeling that that unexpected visit could change everything. The next afternoon, Audrey was organizing ingredients for a new batch of sweets when she heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the house. Through the window, she saw the same black sedan she had encountered at Caleb's homestead. The man who got out was tall, elegant, with gray hair combed back and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore an impeccable suit, contrasting with the rural setting. "Good afternoon," he said, climbing the porch steps where Audrey and Aunt Beatrice had come out to receive him. "I'm Randall Thorne, a businessman from the region. How can we help you?" Aunt Beatrice asked, maintaining her reserve. "I've come to make an offer." Randall took an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "I'm interested in acquiring this property." Audrey felt her blood run cold. "The homestead is not for sale," Aunt Beatrice said firmly. "I understand your reluctance, but I believe you are unaware of the true financial situation of this property." Randall opened the envelope, revealing documents. "There are significant overdue debts. The bank could execute the mortgage at any moment." Aunt Beatrice paled but maintained her composure. "And how did you know that?" "Information is my business." His smile grew colder. "I'm offering a solution before things get complicated." Audrey took a step forward. "What kind of solution?" "I'll buy the property for a fair price, settle all the debts, and still leave Aunt Beatrice a sum to settle comfortably in town." "And if we refuse?" Randall shrugged. "The legal process will run its natural course. You'll lose everything, and I'll buy it at auction for a much lower price." The veiled threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. "I need to think," Aunt Beatrice said. "Of course. But don't take too long." Randall handed her a card. "I have other interested parties in the region. My offer has a limited time frame." After he left, Audrey hugged her aunt, who was trembling slightly. "Aunt, is it true about the debts?" Aunt Beatrice sighed deeply. "They are old debts from when your great-uncle got sick. I've been paying them slowly, but—" She sat heavily in a chair. "Maybe it's better to accept his proposal." "No." Audrey knelt beside her aunt. "Aunt, we're starting to make money with the sweets. I can use my savings to help. We'll solve this together." "My dear, you don't understand. They are large sums. Then we'll work harder. Increase production, get more customers." Audrey took her aunt's hands. "This land is your history, your life. We're not giving it up like that." Aunt Beatrice looked at Audrey with tears in her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Tomorrow I'm going to the bank to renegotiate everything." That night, Caleb arrived promptly to pick up Audrey for dinner. She had chosen a simple but pretty dress, trying to momentarily forget the day's troubles. The restaurant was cozy, with wooden tables and lit candles. During dinner, Audrey told him about Randall's visit, watching Caleb's expression gradually harden. "That Randall also came to see me today," he said grimly. "And what did he want?" "He talked about expansion opportunities and strategic partnerships." I didn't like his demeanor. "Caleb, do you think he can really force the sale of the homestead?" Legally, if the debts are overdue, yes. Caleb took Audrey's hand across the table. But we're not going to let that happen. We? Audrey, what's happening between us, and do you feel it too? Audrey's heart quickened. I do. Then let me help. Not as a stranger, but as someone who cares about you and your family. Audrey looked into Caleb's green eyes and saw absolute sincerity. Thank you. But I need to solve this on my own first. And you will. But when you need help, I'll be here. On the way back, Audrey felt torn between the worry about the debts and the happiness of having found someone like Caleb. But something told her that Randall Thorne would not give up easily, and that the peaceful days in the countryside were coming to an end. On Monday, Audrey went to the town bank wearing her best suit, determined to use all her financial experience. The manager, a young man with glasses, received her with initial skepticism that turned into respect when she demonstrated technical knowledge about debt renegotiation. The property has productive potential, Audrey argued, presenting an impromptu business plan. With the artisanal suites, we can generate enough income to honor the payments. Interesting, but we would need more solid guarantees, the manager replied. What kind of guarantees? A guarantor with assets covering the total value of the debt, for example. Audrey left the bank with a 30-day deadline to present a viable solution. It was a short time, but at least there was no immediate foreclosure. Back at the homestead, she found Aunt Beatrice anxious on the porch. How did it go, dear? We have a month. It's enough time to show that we can pay. In the following days, Audrey plunged headfirst into production. She woke up at 5 in the morning to prepare sweets, made deliveries in town, and visited potential customers. Aunt Beatrice, reinvigorated by her niece's determination, worked tirelessly by her side. Demand grew rapidly. Mr. Henderson placed the first order for the market, and other establishments began to show interest. Audrey created a system of artisanal labels with the story of each recipe, which further increased buyers' interest. Caleb appeared regularly, always with an excuse. He needed to buy freshly baked donuts for the workers. He wanted to try the new coconut macaroon recipe. Audrey knew he was making pretexts to see her, and that made her simultaneously happy and nervous. Do you need help? He offered one afternoon, seeing Audrey exhausted after a long day of production. We're managing, she replied, stubborn. Audrey, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. I need to prove it to myself. Caleb nodded, respecting her determination, but Audrey noticed the concern in his eyes. 2 weeks later, when the business finally seemed to be prospering, Randall Thorne reappeared. This time he didn't come alone. He brought a county official. Miss Montgomery, Randall said with false cordiality, I see you haven't seriously considered my offer. We are resolving the debts, Audrey replied, keeping her voice firm. I'm afraid it's too late. Randall gestured to the official. There's a complaint to the health inspector about unsanitary food production on this property. Audrey felt the ground open beneath her. What complaint? The official handed her a document. Madam, you are prohibited from producing and selling food without the proper health permits. But this is... Audrey quickly read the paper, feeling anger rise. The complaint is anonymous. Complaints are always investigated regardless of their origin, the official said, embarrassed. I'm sorry. After they left, Audrey collapsed into a kitchen chair. All production had to be immediately suspended, pending orders canceled. The income that was beginning to stabilize the homestead situation cut off at the root. It was him, Audrey murmured. Randall is sabotaging us because we didn't accept his offer. Aunt Beatrice sat beside her niece. My dear, maybe it's better to accept his offer. We can't fight someone with so much power. No, Aunt, we're not giving up. Audrey stood up, determined. I'll go after the permits. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. That could take months, Audrey. Then we'll find another way to buy time. That night, Audrey called Caleb, finally breaking her resistance to asking for help. Caleb, can you come here? I need to talk to you. He arrived in 20 minutes and Audrey told him everything. The complaint, the production suspension, the growing despair. Audrey, let me help you financially. It's not money I need right now, she interrupted. I need someone who understands the local bureaucracy, who knows people at the county office, at the health department. Caleb held her hands. That I can do. I know the health commissioner. I have contacts at the Department of Agriculture. We'll get everything regularized as quickly as possible. Thank you, Audrey whispered, feeling vulnerable for the first time since arriving in the countryside. Audrey, you're not alone in this fight. You never were. For the first time in weeks, Audrey allowed herself to believe that maybe she could save the homestead. But she also realized that her fierce independence was giving way to something much more valuable, trusting someone who genuinely cared about her. Caleb kept his promise. In the following days, he accompanied Audrey to various public offices, introducing her to the right people and speeding up processes that would normally take months. His influence in the region was greater than Audrey had imagined. Everyone knew and respected him. "How do you have so many contacts?" she asked, as they left the health department with a list of necessary documents. "My family has been here for 4 generations. I've helped a lot of people, so when I need to, people reciprocate." Audrey felt a pang of admiration. Caleb didn't use his position for personal gain, but to help the community. It was different from anything she had known in the corporate world. While they rushed to get the paperwork done, Audrey took the opportunity to better understand Caleb's life. She discovered that he financed studies for employees' children, maintained a small producers' cooperative, and donated part of his production to charities. "Why did you never tell me this?" she asked one afternoon, after learning that he had paid for a worker's wife's surgery. "I don't like to talk about these things." Caleb seemed uncomfortable. "I do it because it's right, not to impress anyone." It was precisely this kind of genuine humility that made Audrey fall more in love every day. One Thursday, as they waited in line at the health department, Audrey saw something that chilled her blood. Across the street, Caleb was chatting animatedly with Randall Thorne. The two shook hands before parting ways. Audrey felt her world crumble. Her heart pounded, her hands became sweaty. She hid behind a pillar until Caleb crossed the street and approached. "I managed to schedule our meeting for tomorrow," he said, smiling. "That's good," Audrey replied, forcing naturalness into her voice. But inside, her mind was buzzing with doubts. Had Caleb been deceiving her all along? Was he working with Randall behind her back? The handshake had seemed too friendly for a first encounter. That night, Audrey barely slept. The next morning, she invented an excuse not to accompany Caleb to the public offices and decided to investigate on her own. She went to town and, discreetly, asked some people about the relationship between Caleb and Randall. The answers were vague but confirmed her suspicion. They had been seen together before. Her heart broke. She had trusted Caleb completely, opened up to him as she hadn't in years. And now she discovered that perhaps it was all just an elaborate charade. When Caleb appeared at the homestead in the late afternoon, Audrey received him coldly. "How was your day?" he asked. "You tell me," she replied sharply. Caleb frowned. "Audrey, did something happen? Do you know Randall Thorne from a long time ago?" The question caught Caleb by surprise. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "I met him yesterday." "Why do you ask?" "Yesterday?" Audrey crossed her arms. "Because I saw you talking like old friends." "Audrey, let me explain it." "You don't need to." She stepped away from him. "I understand perfectly. You were working with him from the start, gaining my trust to facilitate the sale of the homestead." "That's absurd." Caleb took a step towards her. "How can you think such a thing?" "Because men like you don't get interested in women like me without a reason." The sentence came out laden with old hurts, accumulated mistrusts. Caleb stopped, visibly wounded. "Women like you? Audrey, you have no idea what kind of woman you are, do you?" "I know exactly what kind of woman I am. One who's been fooled before." Caleb took a deep breath, clearly trying to control his frustration. "The man who did that to you wasn't me. And if you can't see the difference, maybe I should leave." He turned and walked towards his pickup truck. Audrey felt like running after him, apologizing, but wounded pride kept her motionless. That night, Aunt Beatrice found Audrey crying on the porch. "My dear, what happened?" Audrey told her about Caleb and Randall, about her suspicions in the fight. "Daughter," her aunt said gently, "have you ever stopped to think that you might be wrong?" "I saw it with my own eyes, Aunt. You saw 2 men talking. You don't know about what. But they seemed close. Audrey, Caleb is a respected man here. Everyone seeks him out to talk." Aunt Beatrice took her niece's hand. "You're letting fear from the past ruin something good in the present." Audrey knew her aunt was right, but admitting it would mean confronting not only Caleb, but also her own insecurities. And that, at that moment, seemed impossible. 3 days passed without news from Caleb. Audrey pretended she didn't care, but she constantly looked at the road, hoping to see his pickup truck appear. His absence left an emptiness she was reluctant to admit. On Friday, Randall Thorne reappeared, this time with a different proposal. "Audrey, may I call you that?" he said, sitting on the porch without being invited. "I have an offer that might interest you." "We're not selling," Audrey replied, but without her previous firmness. "I haven't come to talk about buying. I've come to offer you a job." Audrey stared at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I need someone with your experience to help me expand my businesses in the region. Good salary, excellent benefits." Randall smiled. "And as a show of goodwill, I can intercede with the bank to ease your aunt's situation." The offer sounded like thinly veiled blackmail. Audrey saw the trap, but also saw that Randall was closing in. "I need to think about it." "Of course, but don't take too long. Sometimes opportunities have an expiration date." After he left, Audrey felt cornered. Without Caleb to help with the permits, without income from the suites, with debts piling up, options were running out. On Saturday, during the market, Audrey noticed subtle changes. Some vendors greeted her with less enthusiasm. Customers who were once friendly now seemed distant. "What's happening?" she asked Agnes, the vegetable vendor. "Some people have been commenting that you had problems with the health inspector," Agnes replied, embarrassed. "They say you don't know the local laws." Audrey felt her face flush. Randall was spreading rumors, undermining her reputation in the community. That afternoon, she received the call she most feared. "Ms. Montgomery?" It was the bank manager. "I need to inform you that the deadline for regularizing the debts expires on Monday. Without a concrete solution, we will be forced to initiate foreclosure proceedings. Just a few more days, please. I'm regularizing the documentation to resume production. I'm sorry, but I cannot extend the deadline again." Audrey hung up the phone feeling defeated. She looked at Aunt Beatrice, who was peeling potatoes in the kitchen with slow, sad movements. "Aunt, maybe it's better to accept Randall's offer." "No, my dear. Not after all we've fought for. But I can't solve it alone." Aunt Beatrice stopped what she was doing and approached Audrey. "Daughter, do you know what your biggest mistake is? You think you're alone?" "I am alone. Caleb is suffering as much as you are. I saw him driving slowly on the road yesterday, looking at our house. But he was working with Randall. That's what you wanted to believe because it's easier than trusting again." Her aunt's words echoed in Audrey's mind. Maybe she really had sabotaged something good because of past fears. "What do I do, Aunt?" "Go after the truth. And if you're wrong, apologize." That night, Audrey made a decision. On Monday, before anything else, she would go find Caleb. She needed to know the truth about his conversation with Randall, even if it meant swallowing her pride. But would there still be time to fix the damage she had done? Audrey woke up on Monday with a heavy heart. It was the last day of the bank's deadline, but her priority was to clarify the situation with Caleb. She drove to his homestead with trembling hands on the steering wheel. The property was bustling with harvest activity. Workers circulated among the coffee fields, but Audrey saw Caleb nowhere. She approached one of the employees. "Is Caleb here?" "He's in the office, ma'am. But I think you'd better not." Audrey didn't wait for him to finish the sentence. She walked purposefully to the main house and knocked on the office door. "Come in," Caleb's deep voice said. He was sitting behind a wooden desk, surrounded by papers. When he saw her, his expression hardened. "Audrey, what do you want?" The coldness in his voice hurt, but Audrey swallowed her pride. "I want the truth about your conversation with Randall Thorne." Caleb leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Now you want the truth? 3 days ago, you were already certain of everything." "Caleb, please. I need to know." He sighed, looking tired. "Randall came to me because he heard I had land near your aunt's homestead. He wanted to propose a partnership for a tourism venture in the region." "And you accepted?" "I let him talk to understand his intentions. When I found out he intended to buy Aunt Beatrice's homestead, I ended any conversation." Audrey felt the ground open beneath her. You refused because of us?" "I refused because I don't like people who use coercion to get what they want." Caleb stood up. but mainly because I care about you and your family. Caleb, Audrey, you accused me of being like the men who hurt you. You said men like me wouldn't be interested in women like you. He shook his head. You know what hurt me most? You don't trust me. Tears came unbidden. I'm so sorry. I was scared. Scared of what? Of falling in love again and being betrayed. Of believing in someone and discovering it was a lie. Caleb took a few steps towards her but stopped at a safe distance. And now? Do you still think I'm a liar? No. Now I know I was an idiot. For the first time in days, Caleb's face softened. Audrey, I would never betray you. But I need to know if you truly trust me, because without trust, we can't build anything. I do. I know I trust you because being away from you these past few days was the worst thing I've ever felt. Caleb closed the distance between them and cupped her face in his hands. Never doubt me again, and never doubt yourself again. He kissed her, and Audrey felt as if she had finally come home. Caleb, the bank deadline is today, she said when they separated. I know. That's why I spent the weekend organizing a solution. What do you mean? Caleb picked up a folder from the desk. I'll be your guarantor. I have enough assets to cover the debts and a plan to help you two regularize everything. I can't accept that. It's not charity, Audrey. It's a partnership. I believe in the potential of your suites. With the permits in order and proper planning, you can grow a lot. What if it goes wrong? It won't, because now we're a team. Audrey hugged him, feeling a mix of relief, gratitude, and love that left her speechless. Thank you, she whispered. Now let's go to the bank to resolve this before it's too late. Leaving the homestead, Audrey felt as if a giant weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Not just because of the debts, but because she had reconnected with Caleb, and most importantly, had discovered that she was capable of trusting again. The future, for the first time in a long time, seemed full of possibilities. With Caleb as a guarantor, the renegotiation at the bank was surprisingly smooth. The manager, impressed with the solid collateral and the business plan presented, approved a new payment schedule with reduced interest. You have 6 months to regularize production and demonstrate viability, he explained. With Mr. Donovan's reputation as collateral, we are confident in your success. Leaving the bank, Audrey felt refreshed. For the first time since arriving in the countryside, she had a clear plan and a reliable partner. And now? Caleb asked. Now we go after the health permits and show Randall Thorne that we're not easy prey. The following days were filled with intense work. Caleb used his contacts to speed up bureaucratic processes, while Audrey organized kitchen improvements to meet sanitary requirements. Aunt Beatrice coordinated everything with the wisdom of someone who had lived decades in the countryside. You make a good team, her aunt commented, watching Audrey and Caleb plan the kitchen adaptation. We do make a good team, Audrey agreed, smiling at Caleb. In 2 weeks, the permits were approved. Production resumed with new vigor, perfected recipes, more attractive packaging, and a sales strategy that included delivery to neighboring towns. First legal batch, Audrey announced, kissing the first jar of maple fudge with the new official label. And may it be the first of many, Caleb said, hugging her. News of the regularization spread quickly. Old customers returned, new orders arrived, and even some vendors who had distanced themselves began to greet Audrey cordially again. Mr. Henderson placed an even larger order for the market. Congratulations on your persistence, he said. Few would have endured the pressure you faced. We had help from those who truly matter, Audrey replied, looking at Caleb. Randall Thorne reappeared one hot afternoon, but this time his tone was different, less arrogant, more calculating. I see you managed to get everything regularized, he said, observing the activity in the kitchen. Impressive. What do you want, Randall? Audrey asked directly. To admit that I underestimated you. He paused. My offer of partnership is still on the table. Now that you've proven the business's viability, I can invest in expansion. No, thank you, Audrey replied firmly. We prefer to grow with our own efforts. And with the help of those who trust us, Caleb added, appearing at the door. Randall looked at Caleb with reluctant respect. Smart move, Donovan. You bet on the right horse. It wasn't a bet. It was love, Caleb said, putting his arm around Audrey's shoulders. Randall left without insisting, finally understanding that his strategy of coercion had completely failed. That night, Audrey and Caleb walked through the coffee fields under a starry sky. "You know what impresses me most about you?" Audrey said. "What?" "You never doubted that it would work, even when I doubted everything. Because I saw your determination from day one. A woman who leaves everything in the city to save her aunt's homestead is not someone who gives up easily. And you? Don't you regret getting involved in all this mess?" Caleb stopped walking and pulled her close. "Audrey, you're not a mess in my life. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." They kissed under the stars, surrounded by the aroma of ripe coffee and the feeling that they had built something solid together. "Caleb," Audrey whispered, "I love you. I love you too, and I love the life we're building." Back at the homestead, they found Aunt Beatrice on the porch, gently rocking in her rocking chair. "How was your walk?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "Perfect, Aunt," Audrey replied. "Everything is perfect." For the first time since arriving in the countryside, Audrey felt completely at peace with herself and her choices. 3 months after their engagement, Audrey organized a party at the homestead to celebrate the full regularization of production and to thank the community for their support. The chosen date was not by chance. It was the 1-year anniversary of her arrival in the countryside. "I can't believe it's only been a year," Audrey said, helping Aunt Beatrice prepare treats for the party. "It feels like a lifetime. Sometimes a year can change everything, dear. You're proof of that." The homestead was decorated with colorful banners and wildflowers. Wooden tables spread across the yard displayed the house's specialties: artisanal sweets, fresh biscuits, freshly brewed coffee, and natural juices. The first guests arrived at noon. Mr. Henderson brought his wife and commented on plans to expand sweet sales to other towns. Agnes, the vegetable vendor, arrived with a chicken pot pie as a contribution. "This party is beautiful, Audrey," she praised. "We've gotten so used to you that we don't even remember you came from out of town anymore." "This is where I belong now," Audrey replied sincerely. Caleb mingled with the guests, introducing Audrey as his fiancée to those who hadn't yet heard the news. The pride in his voice was evident with each introduction. "Have you set a wedding date yet?" asked the town priest. "We're thinking of late fall," Caleb said. "A simple ceremony, right here on the homestead." "How lovely. It will be an honor to celebrate your union." During the afternoon, Audrey received an unexpected surprise. Randall Thorne appeared at the party, but this time without pretense or arrogance. "Audrey, may I speak with you for a moment?" She accepted, curious about his intentions. "I came to apologize," he said, embarrassed. "My methods were inappropriate. I recognize that you have built something admirable here. Thank you for recognizing that. In fact, I'd like to make an honest proposal this time. Not to buy, but for a commercial partnership. I have contacts in hotel chains that might be interested in your suites." Audrey studied him for a moment. "I'll think about the proposal. But this time, any business will be done with complete transparency." "I completely agree." Randall left the party shortly after, leaving Audrey reflecting on how people can change when confronted with genuine determination. In the afternoon, when the crowd thinned, Caleb stood on a wooden chair and asked for attention. "Everyone, I wanted to thank you all for being here," he began, his voice emotional. "This party isn't just about Audrey's sweets or our engagement. It's about how a community can welcome someone, and how that person can contribute to making our region even better." Applause echoed through the yard. "Audrey," Caleb continued, looking directly at her, "you arrived here lost, but you helped us find things we didn't even know were missing. You brought innovation, determination, and a lot of love." Audrey felt tears in her eyes. "And now," Caleb said, stepping down from the chair and walking to her, "I want to ask you a question in front of all of you. Who are our chosen family?" Audrey's heart pounded. Was it another proposal? Caleb held her hands and smiled. "Audrey Montgomery, will you build our life here on this land with these people who love us?" "Yes," she replied, laughing and crying at the same time. 1,000 times yes. The party extended into the evening. When the last guest left, Audrey, Caleb, and Aunt Beatrice remained on the porch watching the stars. "You know what moves me most?" Audrey said. "A year ago, I thought I had lost everything. Today I realize I only lost the things that didn't make me happy. And gained the ones that truly matter," Caleb completed. "I gained you. I gained purpose. I gained a true home." Aunt Beatrice stood up and kissed Audrey's forehead. "Welcome to the family, my dear." Officially. Alone on the porch, Audrey and Caleb planned their future. Business expansion, wedding preparations, the dreams they could now dream together. "Ready for the final chapter of this story?" Caleb asked. "Ready for the first chapter of our life together," Audrey corrected. And under the starry sky of rural Vermont, they sealed with a kiss the promise of a new beginning that had become forever. 6 months after the party, on a golden December morning, Audrey woke up beside Caleb in the room they now shared in the renovated homestead. The wedding had been exactly as they dreamed. Simple, surrounded by family and friends, under the century-old fig tree that had witnessed so many transformations. "Good morning, my wife," Caleb murmured, kissing her hair. "Good morning, my husband," Audrey replied, still touched by the new words. Through the window they could see Aunt Beatrice watering the garden, humming an old tune. At 80, her aunt seemed to have rejuvenated with her niece's happiness. "Come on, I want to show you something," Caleb said, getting up. They walked to the porch, where Caleb pointed to a new sign at the entrance to the property. "Montgomery Donovan Homestead, traditional sweets and specialty coffee." "When did you put that up?" Audrey asked, surprised. "Yesterday, while you were in town." "Do you like it?" "I love it. We're a real family now." In the kitchen, they found Aunt Beatrice preparing breakfast. The table was set with loving simplicity: homemade bread, fig jam, fresh cheese, and the unmistakable aroma of freshly brewed coffee. "My dear," her aunt said, "a special order arrived yesterday. 100 jars of maple fudge for a hotel in Boston." "Another one?" Audrey smiled. The business just keeps growing. In recent months, the artisanal production had become a regional benchmark. Audrey had combined her business experience with traditional recipes, creating a brand that respected the past while embracing the future. "You know what makes me happiest?" Audrey said, tasting the still warm bread. "It's not just the success of the business. It's knowing that we're preserving a tradition, generating income for the community, and doing it with love. Just like your great-grandmother did," Aunt Beatrice completed. "She'd be proud." After breakfast, Audrey and Caleb walked through the coffee fields, now integrated into the family business. They had developed a special blend that accompanied the sweets, creating a complete experience for customers. "Audrey," Caleb said, stopping in the middle of the path, "do you regret anything?" "What?" "Leaving city life? Your career? The opportunities?" Audrey looked around. The green coffee fields, the cozy house in the distance, the man she loved by her side. "Caleb, I didn't leave opportunities. I found the greatest opportunity of my life." "Which one?" "The opportunity to be who I truly am. To discover that my place in the world wasn't an office on the 23rd floor, but here, with my feet on the ground and my heart at peace." They kissed among the coffee plants, surrounded by the soft music of the countryside. Birds singing, wind in the leaves, life pulsating in every corner. "And what's next?" Caleb asked. "Now we live one day at a time, build our dreams slowly, like planting coffee." Audrey smiled. "And who knows? Expand our family even more." Caleb looked at her with sparkling eyes. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying our story has barely begun, Caleb Donovan." That afternoon, sitting on the porch with Aunt Beatrice, Audrey leafed through the recipe book that had changed her life. Some pages already had her notes, adaptations, and new flavors created with her heart. "Aunt, thank you," she said suddenly. "For what, dear?" "For teaching me that sometimes we need to go home to discover who we truly are. For showing me that strength isn't facing everything alone, but having the courage to accept help from those who love us." Aunt Beatrice held Audrey's hand. "You taught me that it's never too late to start over, daughter. That a courageous person can transform not only their own life, but the life of an entire community." As the sun began to set, painting the sky golden, Audrey understood that her journey had been about much more than saving a homestead or finding love. It had been about discovering that happiness is not in what we accumulate, but in what we plant. It is not in what we conquer, but in what we share. She looked at Caleb, who watched the sunset with the serenity of someone who knows the value of simple things. She looked at Aunt Beatrice, who knitted in her rocking chair with the wisdom of someone who had lived intensely. And she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Because sometimes to find our destiny, we need to have the courage to get lost. And sometimes the best seeds are planted when our life seems most arid. Audrey had learned that true love, for a person, for a place, for a purpose, has the power to transform deserts into blooming gardens. And that happiness is not a destination to be reached, but a seed to be planted every day, with patience, hope, and much, much love. Under the starry sky of rural Vermont, surrounded by the family she chose and the family that chose her, Audrey Montgomery Donovan smiled at the future, knowing that the best stories are those that never truly end. They just transform into new beginnings.